Last year, I made the decision to try a low buy year, including, but not limiting to, forbidding myself from buying new art supplies. Somehow it's already January, which means I guess I need to fill you in on how well that went, or how well it didn't go. As usual, I would like to disclaimer that in my current living situation, I do not have any outstanding debt. I own my car, and I do not currently pay rent because I live with one of my parents. So my finances may look different from your finances. I am privileged enough that this current situation I'm in allows me to save more money than I would if I did have to pay for rent. If you remember back in June, I actually managed to save more than half of my total income. And while that was my goal for the second half of the year, that's not exactly what happened. I'm not gonna lie, when I sat down to do the math for this video the other day, I absolutely freaked myself out because where I had spent, I think it was about $8,000 in the previous 6 months, this 6 months it was closer to $14,000. I knew that I felt like I'd fallen off the wagon around September, but I didn't necessarily think I'd fallen that hard. Of course, that was before I remembered the major expenses that occurred in the second half of the year, including needing to purchase myself a new laptop and booking a trip to Greece. So if you exclude those two things, it wasn't really that bad. Plus, in order to go on that trip, I needed to get my passport renewed and mailed to me. So the spending I'd done in most of my categories for this last half of the year actually decreased, which was one of the goals that I was working towards. So it looks like out of what I spent, 20.6% was on groceries, 20.1% was on non-negotiables like medication, my workout program, my dietitian, going to therapy. Subscription services took up 5%. I did end up getting rid of Netflix at the end of November. My approved spending was 31.2%, which again, I needed to buy a new laptop, and there were a couple of other things like going to the movies, getting a couple of watercolors for the watercolor class that I took in August. That is in fact technically an art supply, and I was not supposed to be buying art supplies, but what can you do? I think I also mentioned them in the last video since I purchased them in June in preparation for the class in August. And lastly, travel ended up being 21.1%. So that was the plane ticket, getting my passport renewed, my passport photos taken, and booking the trip itself. Well, I didn't include those art supplies in my red light broken rules purchases. I may have broken the rules just a little bit. I'm not saying that Build-A-Bear got me by releasing a Mothman plushie, but I'm also not saying that didn't happen. I think going forward, I need to be more specific with the whole not buying art supplies thing. I had baked in an exception, at least in my mind, that I could replace art supplies. So the last time I went shopping, it was because I needed more spray fixative, I needed more masking tape, and I did pick up a couple of new tubes of watercolor. I also purchased myself a 12-day watercolor advent calendar, which I very much enjoyed unwrapping and swatching. I did start to notice that around August, the idea and the act of shopping no longer gave me that dopamine rush that I'd been searching for. And with the few things that I did order, I noticed that I wasn't feeling any sort of anticipation for the arrival of the packages or what was inside. And again, one of my other goals had been to stop relying on spending to give me that dopamine to make myself feel better. I have been an emotional spender for pretty much my entire life, especially once I entered college, and that was a habit I very much wanted to break. While I didn't save as much in the last 6 months of the year as I did in the first 6 months of the year, I managed to meet my savings goal by October and saved over $14,000, which honestly sounds pretty damn good to me. Moving forward into 2025, I want to continue being conscientious about my budget and where my money is going to. I would much rather spend my money on experiences and having fun than acquiring random objects. Trust me, I am not a minimalist by any sense of the word, but there is something to be said about keeping the clutter minimal and really investing in things that actually improve your life. So I'm going to sit down and work out my rules for 2025, which will include not buying any new art supplies. I can replace the things that I need, but I don't need to acquire anything else. Did you do a low or no buy for 2024? Let me know how it went. What went well? What do you think you can improve for 2025 if you're choosing to participate again? If you missed the first two videos in this series, I will have them linked for you. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them for me in the comments below. In the meantime, stay hydrated, go be spooky, and I'll see you guys in the next one.